once again, friends. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for being here. It means so much to me. One note about the previous video, I used the word aura several times, and I thought about that, and I wanted to make sure that you understood that as I use the word, I'm having microphone karma. I keep forgetting to move this microphone properly. Anyway, the word aura, as I used it, was our influence in our organism of social connection, right? In our societal reality, we aren't independent of the organism that is our environment, the others around us. Whether we communicate with them directly or not isn't the point. We are all connected organically through mind, if not through body. But I don't want you to have the impression that there's some glowing mystical aura around you that I was talking about. What I'm talking about is an aura of influence. And what that means is that when people are conscious of an act that you take, just as you are conscious of the people around you, certain people you immediately make judgments about, even without knowing them or communicating with them. Even if you never have dialogue with them, you will always see them in a certain light. That light will be your impression of the deeds that you know of them committing. A radical example is you find out that somebody moves into your neighborhood who who just came out of prison. You don't even know what the offense was, but he was in prison or she was in prison. She must be this, he must be that. Even if you don't make that kind of judgment, you are reticent around them for reasons you may not even be able to define. But you have made decisions on how you behave and how you feel about that person, even if they just come up in conversation. Boom, it's right there. That's what I mean. That's not a glowing mystical thing. That's a real impression that you have about that person. It may be completely wrong, because those impressions, those are yours. They're not theirs. In other words, you're experiencing them based on your experience and your implied fears of whatever that condition that they once were in means to you. So that's an aura, right? That person has an aura, and that aura is affecting you. That aura I'm talking about is that influence of your perception of their actions. So when Nichiren was talking to Shijo Kingo about his samurai-ness, and conversely, his attempt to convert his employer to Myoho Renge Kyo, a massive cause, then everyone would know the name of Shijo Kingo differently. Certainly anyone who knew what he had endeavored to do with his boss would see him differently, understand him differently. For some, that would challenge them to kill him. For others, that would challenge them in their own perceptions, maybe lead them toward Myoho Renge Kyo. He may be a great source of inspiration for many other samurai, and so on and so forth, right? But this is the greatest cause he could make, and it was very counter to the lifestyle of the shogunate, samurai, authoritarian, warring, killing, murdering kind of governance, right? With something that totally honors the dignity of life. Okay? Dignity from a very different place, if you will. So that's what I meant by aura. Now, why do I talk about that in this video? Well, because this video is, again, a short sutra, a short gosho, a short letter written by Nichiren, but to, guess who? Shijo Kingo's wife. Nichigo Gyo, is that her name? Nichigo, where are you? Nichigen Nyo. Sorry, said it wrong. Nichigen Nyo. Simon Nojo's wife, Shijo Kingo's wife. She's just turning 33 years of age. And 33 for a woman in Japan, or in Asia, I think, was kind of an ominous time for a woman. A transitional age, if you will. And so she writes to Nichiren and shares some of her concerns, wants some advice from him. She goes directly to Nichiren rather than through her husband, Shijo Kingo. So she probably didn't feel comfortable talking about these fears that she had. So she went directly to Nichiren. A bit of background, too, is what was very popular at the time, other than Nembutsu, was the True Word School. And I think that originally that was probably what she studied as far as Buddhism before she and her husband converted to Myoho Renge-kyo. So Nichiren responds to her concerns, and maybe through Nichiren's words we'll get an idea of what it is her concerns really were. But I kind of giggled when I read the first sentence of this letter, because I thought, wow, geez, Nichiren, get right down to it. Anyway, so here we go. The Unity of Husband and Wife. Provocative title. As for the false teachings that gouge out the eyes and delude the minds of the entire Japanese populace, in the final analysis there is none more mistaken than that upheld by the teachers of the True Word School. But let us set this matter aside for now. So I get the sense from that Nichigo Nyo's letter, probably she's worried. She's worried about turning 33. She's worried about being a woman in Japan at the time, being a good wife to Shijo Kingo. She's worried about what her husband, the samurai, is doing with his life. But she also deeply respects that Shijo Kingo is an adherent and great supporter of Nichiren. So she's conflicted. She has these earlier teachings that she learned, and some of those teachings are filling her with fear right now, even though she understands that she follows Nichiren and wants to follow her husband and all of that. She still has vestiges of doubts from earlier teachings. And so in this one paragraph, Nichiren wants to kind of put that to bed in a large sense as, all that previous stuff is malarkey, right? That's basically how he started this letter. So, but I'll set it aside for now. Sure, but you just said it. Okay, so he goes on. Although the 10 similes seem to illustrate the relative merit of the Lotus Sutra and all the other sutras, this was not the Buddha's true intention in expounding them. His aim was to compare the votaries of all other sutras with the votary of the Lotus Sutra, and to show that the votary of the Lotus Sutra is like the sun and moon, while the votaries of the other sutras are like stars or lanterns. In other words, they're much dimmer perception of the dignity of life and the true nature of all phenomena. He goes on, how do we know this? The 8th simile is followed by a most vital passage. It reads, quote, a person who can accept and uphold this sutra is likewise foremost among all living beings, end quote. This 22-character passage is the heart of the entire sutra, the eye of all living beings. Its meaning is that while the votary of the Lotus Sutra is like the sun and moon, the great King Brahma, or the Buddha, the votaries of the Mahavarachana Sutra are like the stars, the streams, and rivers, or like ordinary people. For this reason, the Buddha surely considers anyone of this world who embraces the Lotus Sutra, whether a layman or a woman, monk or nun, to be the Lord of all living beings, and Brahma and Shakra most certainly hold that person in reverence. When I think in this way, my joy is beyond expression. So obviously, really driving home to Nichiren Nyo that she shouldn't have doubts about her husband following Nichiren and her own practice of Myoho Renge Kyo. That in the sutras itself, it is pointed to be the preeminent, supreme way of practice, of living, the highest discipline of dignity and influence in her life. Don't doubt that. Don't doubt that you're practicing correctly. He goes on. Moreover, in pondering this sutra passage day and night and reading it in the morning and evening, I realize that the votary it refers to is not just any practitioner of the Lotus Sutra, since, quote, a person, end quote, in the phrase a person who can accept and uphold this sutra, literally means any human being. I had thought that it must indicate anyone among the monks, nuns, laymen, or laywomen in this world who believe in the Lotus Sutra. Right? That's how I would interpret it. This, however, is not so, for in a subsequent passage where the Buddha again refers to this person, he says, if there is a woman, ... When I, Nichiren, read the sutras other than the Lotus Sutra, I have not the slightest wish to become a woman. One sutra condemns women as messengers of hell. Another describes them as great serpents. Still another likens them to bent and twisted trees. And there is even a sutra that describes them, women, as people who have scorched the seeds of Buddhahood. Now, this is all from earlier teachings of Buddhism, right? But that's because there was a different reason for teaching those kinds of thoughts, because men in those days were absolutely obsessed with getting laid. All they thought about was sex. It was hard to get them to focus on their Buddhist practice. But eventually those kind of statements go away. It's not, though, until you get to the Lotus Sutra where women are given the respect and the dignity of being Buddhas as well. The Lotus Sutra stands on top of so much what's the word I'm looking for? The skillful means, the devices, the teaching tools, rather than the teaching itself. He goes on, Buddhist scriptures are not alone in this regard. Non-Buddhist writings also disdain women. Yung Chi, for example, sings in praise of three pleasures, one which is the pleasure of not having been born into the world as a woman. It is widely accepted that disaster had its origins in the three women. This is some old Asian folklore. Only in the Lotus Sutra do we read that a woman who embraces this sutra not only excels all other women, but also surpasses all men. Think of that. Think of that. Think about 3,000 years ago telling people that women could surpass men in any way, let alone through Buddhist practice, right? Heretical. And those of you who study world religions know that Western, Eastern, Northern, Southern, there's a long history still to this day in these practices of men, patriarchy, trying to find a way to compete with the creative power of the womb. It really comes down to that. Men are awestruck and frightened by this thing that women can do that men can never do. So how can a man surmount that and feel power? He has to debase the thing he's afraid of. And for eons, this has been women, right? The Lotus Sutra doesn't do that. It turns that on its head. Oh my. To this day, I don't know of any other teaching that does that. Any other. I mean, you could talk about indigenous cultures, and there are matriarchies that have existed in time where the women are the ones who control the tribes and so forth. But those aren't really surviving. There are small vestiges of it throughout the world. But again, they tend to be very isolated, don't they? Because they're surrounded by this male dominant force. Anyway, back to task here. He continues. Even though she may be slandered by everyone, for a woman, there is ultimately no greater happiness than to be loved by the man she holds dearest. Let others hate you if they will. What have you to complain of? If you are cherished by Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures Buddha, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions, as well as by Brahma, Shakra, and the gods of the sun and moon, as long as you are praised by the Lotus Sutra, what cause have you for discontent? You say that you have now reached the unlucky age of 33, and for that reason sent offerings. I have presented them before Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lotus Sutra, and the gods of the sun, the god of the sun, and reported your sincerity to them. A person's body has a left and a right shoulder, on which there are 2 gods, one called same name and the other same birth. These are 2 deities whom Brahma, Shakra, and the gods of the sun and moon have assigned to protect each person. It sounds so familiar, doesn't it? The good and the bad, but it's not good and bad in this case. They're just different aspects. That comes from the Nidana, the name and form, the world of name and form. There are corollaries in Taoism and in many other forms, but like the yin and the yang, right? So you're born with both of those, one on each shoulder in this case. From the time we enter our mother's womb until the end of our life, they accompany us like our shadow or like our eyes. And I need to pause again as a reminder. You see how this is translated, what he's saying here? From the time when we enter our mother's womb. And I just, as an aside, I just want to point this out again. I've talked about birth in several videos and other times. It's been a while, though. We tend to think in modern times of the gestation of a baby being the combination of a cell and an egg and a sperm. The egg being fertilized by the sperm. Therefore, a baby is the result of 2 people combining their fluids to make a third person. But any cursory study of biology and chemistry will tell you that that third entity isn't simply a combination of those 2 DNAs. It constitutes a third DNA, a third form, a third life. So in Buddhist terms, a baby is not born of sperm and egg. The sperm and egg in Buddhism create an environment conducive to the instantiation of a karmic chain, a nidana, a third entity that fits that particular condition and instantiates itself in the space, in the samsaric space that the sperm and the egg create. So this is what Nichiren is just casually throwing out here. From the time we enter our mother's womb, he's not talking about formation of the splitting of the cells in the egg after it's fertilized. He's talking about our Ichinen Sansen, our karmic nidanic energy penetrates and instantiates within the conditions set by that sperm and egg. It's a third entity. All right. If we commit an evil act or perform a good deed, they report everything to the heavenly gods without omitting even a detail as minute as a dewdrop or a speck of dust. This is related in the Flower Garland Sutra, Sanskrit Avatamsaka Sutra, or the Kigon in Japanese, and is cited by the great teacher Tendai in the 8th volume of his Great Concentration and Insight. He states, however, that if a woman's resolute mind and conviction is weak, even though she embraces the Lotus Sutra, she will be forsaken. For example, if a commanding general is faint-hearted, his soldiers will become cowards. If a bow is weak, the bowstring will be slack. If the wind is gentle, the waves will never rise high. This all accords with the principles of nature. Now, your husband, Simon Nojo is Shijo Kingo, is a believer in the Lotus Sutra, without peer amongst the Buddhist lay believers in Japan. Being married to such a man, you also are foremost among the women of Japan, because you live for the sake of the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha surely regards you as equal to the Dragon King's daughter. The character for women implies to depend. The wisteria depends on the pine tree, and a woman depends on a man. Make Simon your teacher, and be guided in the resolute mind and conviction of the Lotus Sutra. The bad luck of your 33rd year will turn into the happiness of your 33rd year. That is what is meant by the passage, quote, "The 7 disasters will instantly vanish, and the 7 blessings will instantly appear." End quote. You will grow younger, and your good fortune will accumulate. Respectfully, Nichiren. So, that's a very kind, understanding letter from Nichiren. First of all, allaying her doubts, kind of pointing out that her doubts and her fears about her unlucky 33rd year really come from a lot of erroneous and misguided teachings, reassuring her that her path with Shijo Kingo in practicing Myoho Renge Kyo, taking devout, resolute mind in that practice, is all that she needs to do, and everything will turn from fear to confidence. Stop having doubts. Stop listening to those friends of yours that are saying, well, I don't know how you can follow that guy just because your husband does it. We do this and we do that, and you're sure. There are influences in her life creating doubt in her. That's what's happening. So Nichiren is pointing out how all of those other opinions, they're invalid. They're erroneous. And if she just follows with her husband, he's giving high praise as a great practitioner of Myoho Renge Kyo, foremost amongst others in Japan, the others. If she just commits and just sloughs off these negative influences, her life condition will rise immediately, and all of those other things will just dim. They'll just go away. Those influences will just die off. And that's the nature of our mind in daily life. This is why he equates the practice of Myoho Renge Kyo to be just like life itself. It's not some separate thing. It's just a focus. It's a resolute mind. And with that, I appreciate your resolute mind and your steadfast practice. You make me accountable in the comments, in your viewership. Thank you. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.